rebroadcast, and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. Appreciate all of you. If you have questions tonight, you can private chat them to H. Foister or Ceiling Cat, and we will get those questions answered for you. And if you're listening from somewhere else other than here in the chat room, you can come over to para-x.com and click on the Chat Now button, and you'll be in with all these wonderful people. You can interact with them and interact with us. If you do have questions, though, and you don't want to come into the chat room, you can still send a question to theparanormalview@gmail.com, and we will get those questions answered for you. It's been a pretty nice day off and on where I'm at. It seems like every time the sun come out for about 10 minutes, clouds start coming back in. Eventually it rains some and clear back off and just repeat and repeat like who's sitting on the fence, you know. But I hope everybody else is having a great weekend. Summer's finally starting to come around a little bit, even though it was kind of like in low 70s here today, so that's not bad weather, I don't think. We have with us Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And we have Barbara Duncan.
I am here.
And I hope everybody's ready for a great show tonight, because our guest is going to have some great stories out of his book. So I guess... do you have anything you want to add real quick, Jeff?
Sorry, I got distracted. I didn't hear what you just said. My friend was pounding on the door. I'm like, is somebody realizing that my show started?
Wasn't your ex-girlfriend, was it?
It was not. It was the people that I stay with, and apparently they got me a pair of shoes for my birthday that were the wrong size, so they got returned, and apparently the replacements have just arrived.
Barbara, you got any quick things?
No, it's bright and sunny here. It's really nice, and our thoughts go out to those people in Hawaii. That's quite a little volcano eruption there.
That is, that's quite a game of the floor is lava.
Yeah.
And it goes out to the people in Santa Fe also.
Very much so, yeah. And congratulations to Harry and
Megan.
Megan, thank you.
Took me a second to realize to whom you were speaking. I'm like, I don't think you're saying Harry Potter. I don't know.
Yeah, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
The Duke and
Duke.
All right. Well, I think we should just get right into the show, because there's a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yes.
And you want to introduce our guest?
Sure. Tonight's guest is Keven McQueen, an author born in Richmond, Kentucky, and he's an instructor in the Department of English and Theater at Easterm Kentucky University, and author of several books covering such topics as history, biography, historical true crime, natural disasters, which, there you go, Hawaii, folklore, and ghostlore. So welcome, Keven McQueen. Jeez, Keven McQueen. I'm sure you get that, though.
Hello. Oh, you'd be amazed how often that happens.
Well, we're glad that you decided to come and share your stories again with us. We had a good show the last time you was on, and everybody had a great time. So,
Oh, I did too. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Tonight's not going to be any different. We're going to be talking about one of your books called Creepy California. And that's right up Jeff's and Barbara's alley.
Yay.
A lot of stories in the book about San Francisco area and Los Angeles area. So A little bit about the book. The book is broke down into 5 chapters. And the way that you break them down is Tales from the Tombs, which is a lot about tombstones. And then you got 8 million peculiar ways to die, then strange circumstances, otherworldly wise, coastal ghosts, and predators and prey true crime stories. Now, the stories that you have, because you didn't go to California to get these, you do research online to find all your stories. How long did it take you to research? Because a lot of this stuff is from like in the 1800s that you pulled out. So I'm sure you had to go through a lot of newspapers or whatever, wherever you go to look to find these things at.
Yeah, it took a number of years, actually. I've been doing research in my spare time through old newspapers for the past 15 or 20 years, and just keeping notes on stories that sound like they might be good to write about and writing down the dates and the page numbers. So when the time came to write a California book, all I had to do was go through there looking for California stories. It would have been really nice to go there in person, but no, all my research is done through old newspapers.
And does it take you a while to actually find out? I guess you, first of all, how do you find where the newspapers are? A lot of them, are they not in existence anymore? How do you find those?
Well, I've been going through the old Louisville Courier Journal on microfilm for a long time, starting with the year 1877, and I finally stopped at 1940. So just going through every single issue, making notes on stories that sounded like they might be good to write about. And you can also get local papers. You can get them through interlibrary loan. And a lot of them are just stories I found completely by accident while looking up other things.
Well, I guess right to start with, one of the first ones in the Tombstone, Tales from the Tombs, rather, was a Tombstone Talk. You had one where it just said lynched by mistake, and the joke's on us.
Oh, that dark frontier humor.
that would be a bad way to go, telling them that you're not guilty and they hang you anyway, and then come to find out they made a mistake.
Well, the book I'm working on now is Western states other than California, and it's pretty remarkable what a very, very dark, dry sense of humor that the pioneers had. So you'll see a lot more humor of that kind when the book comes out.
No, I'm
Wow.
sure there was. I mean, do you find that culturally the West is much different in the way that the news is portrayed?
Well, it certainly was very violent, which should really come as no surprise to anybody because it was a frontier area for so long. So much trouble between Native Americans and pioneers, from between cowboys and other cowboys, sheep herders, cattle ranchers, just everybody seemed to have some kind of ghost towns, boot hills, lots of violence taking place. So the violence wasn't really a surprise so much as the attitude toward it. Most people seem to have a pretty light attitude about the violence, especially the newspaper editors of the time.
Really? Sort of like a giant Peckinpah movie.
Yeah, you could say that, definitely.
Wow.
So are you talking about the way the news was actually written and portrayed that way? Is it more of a cavalier approach to how they were writing it?
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. Rather than seeing the tragedy in these gunfights and things, they would usually look for some humorous way to phrase things.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I guess it
Well,
kind of makes sense. I mean, you're trying to make light of a situation, but also in the time, everybody pretty much lived on the edge. So laughter would be the only means of probably alleviating that.
Yeah, I think so. They were very tough people, too, and laughing at that sort of thing, I guess they felt was a way of showing how tough they were.
Well, also, from what I understand, the Wild West wasn't all that wild. So, what gunfights that did happen were probably sensationalized much more
Oh,
because,
that's an
yeah,
interesting. That's very possible.
yeah, it was almost like, hey, it's really exciting all of a sudden. While most of the days we just lay around here like, God, it's hot. It's most of what they were doing.
Well, I mean, out here we have the Barbary Coast, and you had pirates and people being shanghaied every 5 minutes, and it's quite a town to live in. So I guess you did have to develop a sense of humor and a tough skin.
Did they have more Shanghai? I thought Shanghai was more Oregon, Seattle there.
No.
Oh,
Oh, the Hotel Utah in San Francisco actually had tunnels underneath it where they would Shanghai people
Oh
to the
wow!
bay. Yeah,
I think Herbert Asbury wrote a book about it in the
yeah,
20s called The Barbary
called the
Coast.
Barbary Coast. Yeah, awesome book. And very realistic too when it comes to, like I said, people complain about the torrential rainstorms that we have out here and having to drive to work. And we're going, back in the day there were torrential rainstorms, but there were pirates walking the streets.
It's amazing how that's kind of slipped out of the memory, isn't it,
Yeah.
of most people?
So there is, yeah, the a boistery kind of, I guess, Wild West approach, but
now
uh,
doesn't San Francisco have like numbered and lettered streets, like A Street or B Street or anything?
no, but a lot of them are named after states.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure because I figured the pirates would hang out on R Street. I'm just saying.
Wow. Well, now, Barbara, do they still have anything there in San Francisco left of the Barbary Coast? I mean, is there still? I mean, they
There's
made
still
it
a
into
coast.
a tourist place, kind of.
No,
I thought you were going to say the TV series.
No.
no. I mean, I'm sure that there might be tunnels, but they're probably all locked up and nobody can get at them anyway. But
Well,
but
I'm
there's
sure.
still, I mean, as you pointed out, there are still buildings that in existence that are the old Victorians that managed to survive the earthquake.
Hmm. Was Barbary Coast hit pretty good by the earthquake of 1906?
That's Barbary Coast to San Francisco. So yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah. So yeah, the 1906 earthquake was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
With the fire and all that.
Yep.
But I digress.
You digressed. Well, now you got a lot of tombstones and stuff like out of some of the, I guess, more famous cemeteries. You had one with Merv Griffin, who was one of the TV hosts of a game show, and on his tombstone said, "I will not be right back after this message."
Yeah, usually I stay away from really recent stories, but that one was just too good to pass up.
Yeah.
I
The
guess.
chapter's more than tombstones. It's also stories about grave robbers and things of that nature. Just basically cemetery, graveyard-centered stories.
Right, right. And a lot of them's funny like that, and a lot of them, I guess, is kind of spooky, you might say.
So these grave robbings were probably more for items inside rather than for digging up bodies for medical research.
That seems to be true. Most of that took place in the Midwest and the East.
Or could they be for like getting skeletons for
Well, there is a story in the book about someone stealing the clothes off a body in the grave. I guess he just wanted the clothes. They were very nice, I suppose.
Oh my goodness. That's a new one. I've never heard anybody taking the clothes off of a
dead person.
Well, he didn't just take the clothes. He also took the guy's head and sold it, I think, for $6.
I did read that one. Yes.
But they
Okay,
caught
well,
him. He had to give it back.
I can understand the clothes you could. Yeah, I would think the clothes you just go to a thrift stop, but I guess you need it if you're gonna go. It needs a head, I guess. Gotta go to the store a second.
Now, Coffee for Dessert wrote in the chat room, on my tombstone, I want written, whoever shall read this will be haunted forever.
It's a great idea.
You come across that one, you might be in trouble, huh?
Well, once you've read it, it's too late, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, let's see here. There was in your chapter 8 Million Peculiar Ways to Die, you had one called William S. It says that he was swung by his heels by a clown and died from some kind of a hemorrhage.
Yeah, that was in the 1850s. I can't remember the exact year off the top of my head, but it was 1854, 1856, something like that. So that makes him one of the few people, I guess, in history to have been killed by a clown, a circus clown, a real clown.
Right.
I just love it. It says killed by being swung around by the heels of a circus clown.
Right.
That's just, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, it's on his actual death certificate.
Right, and it was deemed it was accidental death, so nobody was charged.
Well, which makes kind of sense.
I do have a graphic I tend to share on Twitter and Facebook where it says clowns are people too, people that want to hurt you.
Or the gentleman who thought he could create an ointment that would toughen human skin and make it bulletproof.
Whoa.
I don't know why, but I love that story.
Which one? Oh yeah. He drank this potion or whatever, or put it on his skin for like 4 or 5.
Like a salve? Or?
Yeah, no, he did it for like 4 or 5 weeks, and he thought he was going to be tough enough because he was trying to invent this to keep bullets from hurting people.
All right.
Because it was during World War I, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
he felt like that he could sell it to the government, and we would win the war. But he did this, I guess, for about 4 weeks.
And then he tried it out on himself.
Tried it out on himself. He first shot himself with a handgun.
Yeah, 3 times in the face.
Yeah, and
it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Strangely enough.
It didn't work.
Couldn't he have like experimented like with like kind of a sharp stabby thing first if he can like on the arm like it went through the skin. I guess bullets would probably do even worse.
Yeah. I guess what makes it darkly funny is that not only did he think it would work, he tried it 3 times, and even that didn't really stop him because then he tried a shotgun.
Right.
Oh,
and that was the end of the experiment right there. So
he died.
Wile E. Coyote-like determination to see it through.
After the first one went in, I think I wouldn't have shot myself anymore.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I need to wait for this one to heal.
Oh
my. That's almost like the lawyer who was demonstrating to a jury how somebody would have accidentally shot himself instead of his client murdering him and ended up proving himself right by shooting himself in the courtroom and killing himself, and the defendant got off because the guy had proven that it could have gone off by itself.
He proved his case, didn't he?
Exactly. Didn't have to get paid or nothing. So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and then there's the lovely suicide by cacti.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Why don't you tell us that one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one was that again?
The suicide by cactus.
Oh, Lordy. Yeah, now there's a story for you. They found I'm trying to remember where. I think it was near Los Angeles. the desert outside Los Angeles. They found it was the 1880s, if I recall. I'm sorry, I just read these things and I write them, and I just have a hard time remembering details later because I've written so many of them. But anyway, a naked male, dead corpse in the desert, badly lacerated, cut to pieces more or less, and no one could really figure out what happened to him. But they did a little digging around and they found a mound with his clothes in it. And the best they could figure was that he went insane and he buried his clothes and then he ran naked through all these very thick cactus, I don't know, fields of cacti, I guess you'd call it, and basically just cactused himself to death.
And that's the way they found him, with thousands of these cactus thorns in him.
Yeah, little needles sticking out.
Yeah.
So they knew it had something to do with cacti.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It had to be painful. I guess he went like 100 feet through the cactus or something like that, through the patches, and before he actually succumbed. But that was the way that they found him. So, I mean, he committed suicide's what he'd done.
Yeah, there was only one set of footprints, so they knew he hadn't been murdered.
Yeah.
Whatever happened, he did it to himself.
And I mean,
either that or that's when Jesus was carrying him.
no. No, he took his clothes off, so you know that, I guess he kind of like dug a little grave, put the clothes in it, kind of, and then just took off running. So, do you think people is right in the head when they're doing things like that?
Well, obviously he was insane, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's the old-fashioned death by 1,000 cuts, I guess.
I guess so, self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Well, he was probably just feeling a bit prickly at the time, so yeah.
Just a little bit.
Well, oddly enough, my friend here has all this cacti here, and he's got it all bunched around, and at the end of the day, when we're trying to round up the chickens and the roosters, sometimes you're like, we know you won't go in this here, because then they just like out of reach, because they know we can't get at them when they're like standing next to far enough into the cacti.
Every time I see a cactus now, I think of that story.
There was a guy who was a guard at the prison in Folsom, I guess Folsom Prison.
Yeah, that's...
Is that in San Francisco area, Sacramento, somewhere? Where's that at?
Yeah, that's outside of Sacramento.
Outside Sacramento. Yeah, you want to tell that one if you know what it is, Kevin?
Well, this guard had a habit of, I guess he thought he was impervious to electricity, so he used to impress the prisoners by holding these two electric cords and showing how much electricity that he could take. Kind of like a superhero, and then came the day that he stepped into a puddle of water while doing this.
Oops.
And that was the last time he did it.
Yep.
But I guess it really, really impressed the prisoners.
Yeah.
So it was an unintentional suicide's what it was.
Thank you.
Yeah, he put on a show for him and just show him how much he could do, and they got to see for themselves, I guess. So
It's just one of those cases where you have to, like the guy who ran through the cactus plants, you just have to wonder what was going through their mind and what made him think it was a good idea to show off to the prisoners how much electricity he could stand.
yeah, and he'd done that quite a few times before. I mean, just showing off. So eventually it's going to come around to bite you.
I guess so. Maybe the idea was, don't fool with me, look what I can do.
There was another one that I thought was kind of neat, I guess you might say. Not necessarily neat, but it was a first of a kind, you might say. In 1937, Carl Y. of Los Angeles was the first person to commit suicide in a mobile home.
Yes, and he did it by basically turning it into his own personal gas chamber.
Yeah.
By sealing up all the doors and windows and mixing chemicals in such a way that he just filled the trailer with chlorine gas.
And he sealed the windows up because he didn't want anybody else to be harmed. So he intended to go ahead and bump himself off, you might say.
Yeah, I thought that was nice of him not to take anyone with him.
Yeah.
Because he certainly could have.
Sure could. So, yeah, it was pretty interesting.
And there are some really ironical ones in here too, which is the gentleman who committed suicide by drinking arsenic, and who had once written a book called How to Be Happy.
Because arsenic's delicious. Oh wait.
Life is so strange.
Yeah, really.
Oh.
And of course, cyanide. Hey, almonds. Hey, how nice is that?
You had one. It was by Ida Grace W., and it was listed as slow motion suicide. I didn't write all the details down. Do you remember what that one was?
As I recall, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis, which would take several years to kill you, and she, in sheer dread of the end coming, purchased some was it
cyanide, wasn't it, or something like
cyanide or
some kind of stuff
kind of
like
acid or something, and she kept it in a vial and carried it with her everywhere she went, until finally she just couldn't stand it anymore and couldn't take the waiting, and she just drank it.
Ow.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
There's a lot of the stories like that about people that committed suicide. I didn't think that there was all that many that would actually run around killing themselves. They had a thing, I guess it was in your book, where the people in Los Angeles said that their sanitariums or insane asylums was almost overfilled, and they had to build a new one, and that one ended up being almost filled, and they was fixing to build a third one.
Yeah, it was a doctor at the time who did the math. He did some calculations according to the number of lunatics there were in California at the time, and he predicted that within 20 years, everyone in the state would be insane.
So is that
he was
the way?
Off by a couple of years.
Yeah, he was saying, well, I have to get the people in other states to take care of us because everyone in California will be insane.
What? When I moved to California, a friend of mine accused the fact that the country is tilted and all the nuts roll to California.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what he said when he found out I was. Like, I'm an actor. I'm in L.A.
Maybe the Earth is spinning so fast that everybody just tends to fall over to that side.
Okay.
No, it's all this nice sunshine and fresh air, Henry.
Oh, is that what it is? So are you tempting me saying I need to come out to California?
Yeah, just hop on a 9-hour bus trip and there you go.
Train.
Train, yeah.
Yeah. So, there was another one I thought was a bad way to go, really. The guy's name was Burton J, I believe it was, and it was listed as for his health.
Oh, yeah.
You want to tell that one? I mean,
I remember that one. Yeah, that one kind of makes me shudder.
Yes.
There isn't a lot that makes me shudder, but that one does. He was from Indiana, and he went to California for his health, as so many people did. And while visiting an ostrich farm, I think on the outskirts of L.A., he was attacked by red ants.
Right. He sat down to rest or something like that, and his legs wouldn't move. He couldn't get up, and the next thing he knew, he was being attacked by red ants.
Yeah, wave after wave of ants, and nobody would help him because he was off in the distance enough that they heard him shouting and wiggling and waving around, but they thought he was a drunkard having delirium tremens.
Oh,
Yeah. So nobody went to him for, I don't know.
I think 3 days.
Yeah, something like that. And when they did go check, he had been eaten alive by red ants. Was he still alive when they
He
took?
was still alive, as I recall, but died in the hospital a day later.
Yeah. God, that was a bad way to go.
Yeah.
wow. Now, were they? I know there are different types of red ants. Were these like fire ants, or just like the movie Naked Jungle, where they just sort of overran him, or?
I think they just overran him.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think fire ants had migrated to America at the time.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong about that, though.
Well, I don't live in California. Do you guys know how big red ants get out there in the colonies? I'm sure that there's probably big mounds or something, hive.
Colonies go for states, they're all underground, and a lot of Europe is one giant ant colony, so
Yeah.
it's difficult to associate that. But you're right, I don't think fire ants were up here yet, and they haven't gotten as far up as I am anyway, and I don't think that they were even in Texas at that point. But ants enough. I mean, that's what they used to do, again, going back to the whole torture thing of covering people with honey and then putting them in anthills.
Right.
Yes.
So they can't eat protein.
So-
Obviously, they eat ants. So
We're pretty much protein.
Yeah.
Huh.
but,
With-
wow, 3 days. Whew.
With these kinds of stories, you wonder the research that you did, and you said it took years of doing research, and how many more stories like this, not just in California, but all across the United States, of odd things like that, of how people either died or committed suicide. There's got to be tons of them, and a lot of these took place back in the late 1800s to early 1900s that you wrote about.
Oh, yeah, thousands and thousands, I'm sure. Yeah, a great many of my books actually have chapters about that, so you could probably find a couple hundred just from my books alone.
Well, the what's that big cemetery, Hollywood Forever?
Well, you got Hollywood. We got a lot of great cemeteries, but Hollywood Forever is one of the more famous ones. You also had Forest Lawn, which I think geographically might be wider and larger. But yeah, Forest Lawn I've been to, for Hollywood Forever.
Well, when you walk around and look at the different tombstones, just like the one from Merv Griffin, they got to be some funny sayings on some of the tombstones. If you walk through
I believe Merv Griffin is in the Wilshire Cemetery near Wilshire and Westwood, which is also where Marilyn Monroe is and such. I don't think he's in Hollywood Forever Cemetery. I'd have to check findagrave.com to make sure, but I'm pretty sure he's over there. Well, I've told this story before on the show, but Kevin isn't aware of it. I off the air, I mentioned some of my haunted experiences here in LA, but Hollywood Forever Cemetery, I had a friend who used to be one of the guides for Dearly Departed tours, and he was with his girlfriend walking through Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which, by the way, butts up against the back lot of Paramount Studios, and a lot of people have seen ghosts on either side of the wall going back and forth like they're commuting to work. But one day he was in the cemetery with his girlfriend, and he had a digital, an analog recorder with an old cassette tape. This is years and years ago. And he went into the huge mausoleum, which oddly enough nowadays in the summer, they actually project movies on the side of this mausoleum. So it's like its own big wide screen. And they have summer nights as you're sitting, hundreds of people sitting on the graves watching movies, either horror, romantic, and whatever. I forget the name of the group that play it. But he went into the mausoleum, and Peter Lorre and Rudolph Valentino's niches are close to each other. So my friend took his recorder and he just said, "Is anyone here?" And he put it down, went outside, got his girlfriend, came back in, retrieved the recorder, and they left. And as they were driving home, he puts the cassette recorder into the player deck, and they had to pull over when they realized they heard something, and you could hear him saying, "Is there anyone here?" You hear his footsteps walk away, and then in the completely empty mausoleum, you hear, "I can't act."
That's really weird.
And when we've had our friend Marla Brooks on, I make jokes about the fact when she goes to the cemetery, the Canada geese chase her. Because they do. Fine with me.
Geese just like to do that. And it's interesting how many geese and ducks there are in cemetery.
I know, yeah. Well, I think they migrate. I know that some of there's a food court in downtown LA which has ducks that used to, when I was working in a certain area of downtown, the food court, there were these ducks, and they would fly back and forth once a year, and they'd have ducklings, and off they'd go, and they'd have to put up signs saying, "Please do not give them French fries; it will kill them." Because people would just like, "Oh, they're so cute. Let's give them food."
Did we lose Henry?
No ghost ducks, though.
Did we lose Henry?
That would be a first.
No,
I believe we did.
Wow.
Looks like
He's not online.
How did we lose him and still be on the call ourselves?
Because we're in the conversation, and I think we lost the show.
Oh,
but we're going to continue this just so that we can keep going.
Are you recording?
They might be having I'm recording. Might be having a thunderstorm back there, so I'm not quite sure what happened. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, now I'm looking.
Continue
I see his little icon.
Wow, looks like he's gone.
Yeah,
So continue your duck story there.
That was pretty much it.
Okay.
Cute ducklings. I don't know if they're still there anymore. I should go by some lunchtime
and it's interesting because I don't recall any animal stories. In
the books, yeah. Yeah, no ghost cats or dogs?
I don't think so. I don't think there are any animal stories.
I had a ghost dog bark in my face on the Queen Mary.
Oh, there are some.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's hard to tell how many, if there are any in cemeteries. I do recall, we have a lot of wildlife up here because most of the cemeteries are on the outskirts of the town. So you do tend to get the ducks, the geese. We have wild turkeys and deer. Now, the deer come in for the flowers, but...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're kind of like sanctuaries in a way. Cemeteries, that is, for animals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know we have a pet cemetery somewhere out. It's not in it's in LA, but it's like in one of the... God, stop it. Stupid cat. Need to trim her nails. But yeah, like it's the cemetery where like Lassie is buried, Toto from The Wizard of Oz, or actually his name was Terry. Trigger, Roy Rogers' horse, is buried there. and such like that. But I can't remember precisely where it is. I haven't been able to visit that, and I don't know if there are any little animal ghosts running around there. That would be an interesting thing to check.
That's amazing. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what about death by animals? Have you found that there's a lot of critter deaths?
Oh, there should be. Well, red ants, for example.
Yeah, yeah. Red ants aside.
There have to be some, if I would only think about it. I know there are some in some of my other books. I can't think off the top of my head if there are any in the Creepy California book. But there might be.
Yeah, aside from red ants.
It all kind of runs together in
That
your
still
mind, and
gives
it's
me
hard to
the,
remember which book, which stories are in.
That still gives me the.
Yeah, that is not a way you want to go over the course of 3 days.
Definitely not. So let's talk a little bit about the article that you wrote on Russ Columbo.
Oh, okay.
Because 1934, that was, of course, the swing era, and there was a lot of jazz musicians, lots of writers at that point. So it was kind of the thing. But let's talk about Russ Columbo.
Well, he's largely forgotten now, but in the early 1930s, he was very, very famous, like Bing Crosby, for example. The song he's most famous for is called, give me a moment, Prisoner of Love. That's the title.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was really made a ton of money. I can't remember now exactly how much he made, he and his band, but a lot. And he died in such a very, very strange way. He went to visit a friend of his in Hollywood, I think it was, and his friend collected weapons, and he had an old French dueling pistol.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we see where this is going, and they didn't bother to see if it was loaded. It was a really old pistol, about 100 years old. I guess they figured they didn't need to look. But his friend lit a cigarette, and he dropped the match, and the match just happened to land in such a way that it set off the gun, which actually did have a bullet in it. And just enough gunpowder that the bullet ricocheted off a dresser and hit Columbo in the eye and killed him instantly. So a super freak accident. But the really strange part was that his mother had had a heart attack only a few days before, and she was recuperating in the hospital. And nobody wanted to break the bad news to her that her son was dead, so no one told her. And they kept up this big charade for years and years that he was alive and on tour, and people would send fake telegrams and fake letters to her, pretending to be Russ, and she got a weekly check from him, which was actually an insurance check, but nobody told her that. And his girlfriend at the time was the actress Carol Lombard, and she was in on the conspiracy too. In fact, she died 10 years after Russ Columbo died, and she never did find out the truth about it.
Wow.
That's so sad. Well, and number one, I guess it was back in the day when news wasn't that readily available in a number of streams, so they were able to keep it from her that.
Well, she was blind, so she couldn't read the papers.
Oh.
And nobody around her told her.
Right, they would just be careful not to mention that. It was actually very widely known at the time, so it was actually kind of a miracle that she never heard about it.
How sad.
It's a sad story, but in a way it's kind of inspiring, too, that all these people would band together to try to keep her from hearing this bad news over a whole decade and went out of their way to really keep the illusion going.
Huh.
It's like the, no, oh God, I can't remember the actress's name now. Jeff, you remember it, where she's walking down the staircase and says, "I'm ready for my close-up, Mr.
Oh,
King."
Norma Desmond.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Norma
Yeah.
Desmond, yeah. That
Sunset
kind of
Boulevard.
Yeah, where you could keep the news, and her butler did, I guess, for a number of years, that she wasn't getting fan letters.
Oh, right.
That he was writing.
He was writing the fan letters and pretending she was receiving them.
Exactly.
To keep her from realizing how totally washed up she was.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So, of all the stories that you were writing about California, what was the one that makes you want to just sort of drop everything and buy a plane ticket?
Oh, everything. I would love to go there.
It is fascinating too. Yeah, and there's a lot of stories out here. Like I said, with the Barbary Coast being so, being
Yeah,
barbarian.
I feel like I just barely
I
scratched the surface.
I almost said that myself. I was waiting for a pause for you to say it's
Yeah,
so
there were
Barbary.
so many good stories from California, but a lot of them are very well known, and I tried to avoid stories that had already been told by several different authors. I was trying to do things that weren't really quite so well known.
Yeah, but some of the ones that are well known, like we were talking before the show started, like Fatty Arbuckle, which is tragic in itself, just from the way it was
Oh
handled.
yeah. I mean that's definitely, guilt by public opinion.
Oh, yeah. It was a very terrible thing. For about 30 years or so after it happened, it was just something everybody knew he was guilty, and now everybody knows he wasn't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I always enjoyed his films. I grew up
Oh, me
with our
too.
PBS station showing all of the old silents, and I was a big fan of Buster Keaton,
Definitely.
Chaplin, obviously,
And
and they all had such, yeah,
Arbuckle gave Keaton his career start.
exactly.
They made numerous films together.
And so many of these great comic had such sad, horrifying lives.
It somehow seems to go along with being a comedian. I wonder why. Maybe you have to experience sadness to draw out real humor from life.
Oh, maybe but that's like a lot of people are surprised when uh, somebody who's well known as a comedian will take on either a dramatic or even a really dark role and just rock it. Because I don't know if you ever saw Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Well, you remember the evil commandant in that film, who was one of the most vicious evil characters ever committed to film?
Yes.
Well, I saw it at the ArcLight, and Guillermo del Toro did a Q&A afterward, and he said one of the hardest things he had to do was get people to get on board with him casting that actor. And we were like, oh my, that was Oscar-winning caliber acting. He says, you don't understand. In Spain, he is the equivalent of your Charlie Chaplin. He's a comedian. And nobody thought that he could pull off that role because he was normally so hilariously funny.
It seems like every comedian just longs for a chance to play a dramatic role.
Oh yeah, well I've lost count how many comedies I've done, but whenever I get to play a dark, evil character, I just revel in it. It's just a blast to play.
And it makes you wonder that fascinating that the comedy and tragedy masks that you normally see are usually together.
Exactly,
Uh, comedy and
almost
tragedy.
melded together sometimes.
Well, it's a cliche, but comedy and tragedy are two sides of a coin.
Yep.
You can't have one without the other, really.
Like they say, tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
kind of
here
the
we're making.
philosophy. Yeah, that all my books are based on that idea.
Yeah, I mean, we're laughing at this poor guy being eaten alive by ants over the course of 3 days, and we're like, "Ah, it's funny." At the time, I don't think it was that funny.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, pretty much.
if it happened to somebody you knew yesterday, it wouldn't be funny at all. But give it 40,
Oh,
50, 60 years and find some dry, ironic way to describe the incident, and suddenly it just seems kind of funny.
exactly.
It's sort of the MASH, approach, which is, if you're in intense tragedy, sometimes laughter is the best approach.
Exactly.
Yeah, that too, that too. And some things are just so dark that really all you can do is try to describe them in a humorous way, so it
Yeah.
won't be overwhelming.
So I have to wonder with Henry now, because Henry's not This is the first time in my memory that Henry has been
Yeah.
booted from a call. Now,
He,
Skype hates me. and Skype kicks me off pretty regularly, usually at least once a week. And I have learned with this new nightmare version of Skype that if you reboot, even just the program, you can actually go to the name of somebody who's in the conversation, and it'll say, "Hey, join the conversation." And I'll click on that, and it pops me right back in. So I don't know if Henry is aware.
He should be able to because he just came on.
Oh, cool. Oh, he may have had to reboot his computer then.
I have trouble with Skype. I've been sitting here just dreading a moment that I get kicked off.
But
it's Skype.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be so good, and then all of a sudden it became this, what mushrooms were they taking to design it this way version. So.
There he is.
Yay!
There he is.
There's Henry, yay.
Is there feedback on everybody, or is it okay?
No, we're good. I don't hear anything.
No, I'm hearing.
All right.
It's okay.
Well, I'm sitting here looking, and all of a sudden it says, no connection. And why? Internet go to? And it's still not back on. I'm having used my air card. I pay enough for the Verizon, so I might as well just out of it. So,
yeah, welcome to my weekly world.
Did you get everything stopped and shut off and everything, Barbara?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how much of the show. Well,
thankfully, Barbara's recording it.
No.
I was recording it. It stopped me when we.
Right. So
when I added him. Hold on a second. Okay, it's still recording.
Is it? Okay.
Cool.
Okay. All right then. Well, then I'm not going to try because I can't save what little bit I got. That'd take too long. And so I'll just let you record. I'll get us back on, and we'll go from there. Is there ready for me to hook up?
I
said, is everything ready for me to hook up?
Yeah, I restarted the server, so everything's back where.
Okay. All right.
Has the chat room been wondering? We disappeared off the chat room, or now we're back in?
No,
I just told them that it'd be a few minutes. See, I couldn't even contact anybody. I had no internet. So.
Well, I figured it's because you and Patsy both drop off together. So
right. So.
Figure it was something like that.
So it's raining where you are, Henry? You got a storm, or?
I don't think that there's a storm, but it's
they thought
whole internet. It didn't kick me off, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Okay. What I need to do here is go here. And
Your next book, Kevin, is going to be, Skype horror stories.
That would be a thick book.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and connect us back here and see if it.
Okay. Pretty darn funny. Actually, we should keep talking because otherwise.
Exactly. We're still
well, this is just an example of the fact that everything's funny if it happens to someone else.
Yeah, and in real time, it's.
And in real
Barbara,
time.
It shows I'm connected.
Yes,
see if they're hearing us in the chat room now.
Okie dokie, will do.
So, it's like on YouTube, there's a group called Screen Junkies that talk about movies and entertainment, and they have a regular daily live show at like 11 a.m. And every so often, something goofy will happen. They'll point out this is the wonder of live TV.
Yeah, they can hear us.
Yeah. So we're back connected.
Yeah.
So, with that little foray into the other world, we're back on. I'm glad everybody's still with us. Everything seems to have kept going, so we're still doing good.
Exactly.
We are still doing a show.
You might say we've already had our break. Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, the show must go on.
Okay. We have with us Keven McQueen, and we're talking about his book, Creepy California, which, if you was not here during the first part, then you've missed it all. So everything is good. We're back on.
And we were just talking about you while you were away, Henry.
Yeah.
Oh, you were?
It was.
It was complimentary.
I don't think we was connected though while I wasn't here though, so I don't know.
Yeah.
We're-
Our Skype call.
Yeah, we've been talking the whole time.
Huh?
The show goes on. We were surprised, though, because I thought since you had started the call, your dropping out would have ended the call, but apparently not.
Yep.
Yeah, we're on. Yeah.
Yep. The conversation keeps going.
Right.
So we stayed on. Yeah.
Good.
So
We're talking about Kevin's book, so let's see
we are.
where we left off at. Oh, there was one. It was Be Sure You're Right is what the one was called, and it was with William, and he swallowed mercury tablets.
Yikes! Why?
Side. Yeah, because he thought he seen his wife with another man, and it turned out to be her twin sister, but that was after he was dead. He didn't know that. So, but
Wait, he mistook her twin sister for a guy?
yeah, because he had, I guess they lived in the San Francisco area or something, and he traveled south to some place for something. I don't know if he was having problems or what, but he seen what he thought was his wife with another man, and he thought, I guess they'd been having problems. Anyway, he wrote a letter or whatever and took the tablets and killed himself, and come to find out it really wasn't his wife.
Surprise!
Okay. Now wait a minute here. He was married for how long and didn't know his wife had a twin sister?
I guess they looked just alike.
No, but how are you married to somebody and not know they have a twin sister?
Oh, you're
Maybe
saying he
her
saw
from a distance or something.
He saw the twin sister with a guy.
Yeah.
Okay, the way you worded it, it sounded like he saw the two twin sisters standing next to each other, and one of them he mistook for a guy. That's how my brain heard your grammar.
Well, that would be even funnier.
It would have been. That's why I was like, why would he mistake her twin sister for a guy?
Yeah, and took the cyanide tablets and killed himself.
Oh man,
People just jump off the deep end too fast and want to do away with themselves.
and without even confronting to clarify whether it was true. I mean, I can understand if you think, oh my God, I should just kill myself. At least go up and say, how dare you, and then find out it's a big misunderstanding, as opposed, no, it's me, it's not your wife, my sister, as opposed to, well, oh, she's talking to a guy, I might as well kill myself, because that's such a practical solution. Great course of action there. That'll handle everything.
Oh,
A little too impulsive.
Well, at least after you took the mercury tablets, at least you knew what the temperature was outside.
Yeah, I don't think it's all right.
oh, come on.
Here's a great story that, it's actually interesting because I think there was a movie made out about it.
Oh.
And that is Why Not Make a Game of It?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Where somebody makes a game out of trying to murder somebody, or the game ends up in a murder.
Isn't that the Saw
and this was
franchise?
Sounds like something that could happen.
Yeah. WHB of Los Angeles found a suicide note of his brother. It had written in the form of a treasure hunt. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, he gave him directions. Go to this street. So he went to that street and found another note, and the note said, go to this location. And he went over to that location and found another note and followed the directions on that one. And finally, at the end, he found his brother had asphyxiated himself in a car.
Yeah.
So that was the end of the treasure hunt. So why make such a big deal out of it? I don't know, making him go to 4 different locations.
Maybe so they couldn't get stopped, but you think that he would just write a note and drive off somewhere.
Yeah.
Again, you have to wonder about the workings of the minds of people who do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They got to be messed up, so that's a good way to prove it or
So
myself.
overly complicated.
Or in the instance of the lady in Pinole, which is not too far away from here, 22, she killed herself by pounding a 4-inch steel spike
Yeah.
into her skull.
Ah!
Yeah, that's another one that kind of makes me shudder when I think about it.
Wait, did she do it manually or like with a nail gun?
No, spike.
With a hammer.
How could
How?
But,
Yeah.
but the irony of it was she laid down and went to sleep in her bed, woke up the next morning and went in to see her mom, and she freaked and took her to the hospital. Of course, it was too late then.
It sounds
Well, I mean, you could
impossible,
pound it
but
into-
in another one of my books called Horror in the Heartland, there's a story of a guy, I think in, Nebraska, I think, who did pretty much the same thing, only he hammered 2 spikes through his head, one horizontally and one vertically, I think.
Oh,
all I can think of is after the first thunk, you'd say, this is probably a bad idea.
He was a tombstone epitaph cutter, and he just drilled himself through the head with his own chisels.
But how can one drive a big railroad spike into their head like that?
With great determination.
And yeah, but
well, it said it
just
was
lay
a
down and
4-inch
go to
steel
sleep.
spike. Who knows? Yeah,
You know, I can understand someone committing suicide like Clara Blandick, who played Aunt Em in The Wizard of Oz. When she decided to take her own life, at least she dressed in her Sunday best, lay down on the couch, put a plastic bag over her head, and just let herself suffocate. That's, better than saying, spike, hammer, this works. No, ew.
and somebody in the chat just wrote, those people had a lot of drive.
Exactly.
Oh,
I'm
dear.
committed to this course of action.
I guess once you start, you really can't stop.
No,
Not easily.
Yeah.
I'm no quitter.
It's kind of like over with at that particular point.
Really? I think when they got to the lobotomy aspect, they'd like, what am I doing?
Had one called Party Crasher in 1923. John, he went to somebody's funeral, walked up to the casket, and didn't know who they were, but it was a funeral for somebody else. He walked up to the casket and then committed suicide. I believe he shot himself to death, or
Yeah. The thing that made it so strange to me was before he did it, he actually said to the people, "Is this a funeral?"
oh yeah, that's what it was.
So,
It's a
well,
room.
what do you think it is? Of course it's a funeral.
It's a room for one more?
And now it's a double funeral.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh,
Good grief.
Now, the best one of my favorites, because it is a ghost story, is actually from Berkeley. Mary H. thought the spirits of 2 deceased cousins were out to get her.
Oh.
And so she decided to baffle them by ascending into a cloud of smoke.
oh yeah.
What? Okay.
She stuffed the kitchen stove full of paper, lit it, made herself comfortable on the range,
Oops.
and her husband found her sitting calmly on the stove.
Yeah. I'm sure she was.
Uh-huh.
Ah,
I don't know. Maybe it worked.
I would assume she's baked more ways than one.
yeah, well, I didn't know that was a form of exorcism.
Really? Or warding, anyway. Goodness.
It's, yeah, what goes through people's minds.
Wow. I don't know.
Yeah, here's another, because this is funny because I work at Berkeley, that Professor Roger, and I don't know this, let's make it clear, worked at Berkeley. His job was terminated, so he strolled to Gilman Hall and shot a professor of chemistry. Shot an associate
Yeah,
professor.
shot both of them. Yeah.
Well, at least shooting a gun technically is a chemical reaction of the bullet.
Yeah,
But he didn't
so,
kill
yeah.
him.
They both survived. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was
Well, they had
committed to an asylum.
They had rubbed all that salve on their face, so they were now bulletproof, apparently.
And I assume that's the state asylum in Nampa. That's I'm not familiar with that one, so I don't know if it still exists.
But he was in there for what, 12 years or
something like 10 or 12 years.
And they deemed that he seemed to be getting better, so they let him go out on his own.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Or something. And what happened to him then? He ended up...
well, he put his hat on the train tracks, and...
That's what it was. Yep.
And then something happened.
Yeah, the train kind of helped him along.
Got all squishy.
So apparently he
just
as healed as what they thought he was. I labeled that one as an early school shooting.
Yeah, well, in a way it is, isn't it?
Technically, yeah.
So, but those were pretty interesting, like that. So I called it an early school shooting.
But at least he knew who he wanted to shoot, and it wasn't just like, hey, look, boom, take everyone out.
Well, the story didn't say why, if it was them that got him fired or what, because it didn't say what happened for him being terminated.
Yeah, I don't believe the newspaper reports actually said, but if you put two and two together, it sounds like he was blaming them for some reason.
That's what
he was kind of crazy too, so who knows?
And I'm not sure
if
he was a chemist or not.
What, Barb?
So I wasn't sure if he was a chemist or not.
Yeah, it didn't say. You had one called Punctual Percy. Let's see here. He shot himself just before 5. And there was a reason that he did that. And he wrote a note that he shot himself before 5. Because...
He didn't want overtime, or?
No, he committed suicide, but the reason he had to do it before 5 was because he had a $25,000 life insurance policy that went to his sister. Oh. And if he had waited till after 5, the life insurance policy wouldn't have been good anymore.
I always thought that suicide negated insurance policies.
I think they do now.
They do now.
But apparently at one time they didn't, because I've seen lots and lots of news stories of people committing suicide so that a family member would get an insurance payout.
Well, at least normally wouldn't they be clever and make it look like an accident?
Well, I'm sure lots of people did.
Right. A lot of people probably do now, but that's one of the stipulations I think most policies have, is if it's if you commit suicide, it voids the policy.
Now, Kevin, in your research, did you find that a lot of people, there were stories of murders, suicides for those insurance policies?
Yeah, quite a few. Which is why I think at one time, very possibly, they would not negate your policy over that.
Huh.
But then they did. Apparently, they must have been losing a lot of money because of that.
Everyone's dying.
I would think.
Yeah, really.
Well, they probably didn't make a lot of money. You take out an insurance policy, and the next month, you only get one premium and have to pay out a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would make total sense.
And then you get the flip side. My dad, my dad had his blood drawn for an insurance policy, and he passed away like literally a week later, and they wouldn't pay out, saying, well, if we had not taken the blood yet, because they had accepted the payment, but if they hadn't drawn the blood, they wouldn't have known of his, quote, some pre-existing condition that they called it now, and you're like, oh, well, we'll just give you back your premium, and there you go. Good luck with the whole not paying out thousands of dollars to you.
Total sense.
That's why I don't use Primerica anymore. Yeah.
Got one. It was one of the longer stories in the book, and it was called "Where Ignorance is Bliss," and it deals with something that happened in the early 30s. It was about a singer by the name of Russ Colombo, and
we've been there.
Oh, yeah, we talked about it while you were off.
Sorry,
oh,
you missed it. That's what playback is for.
yeah, right.
Henry will have to listen to his own show
Seriously.
just so he can hear.
Well, it's really good. I got on YouTube and looked him up, and they've got his songs on YouTube.
Oh,
They're listening.
wow.
Yeah, you can find CDs of his music even now. So I always wonder, though, how much of his very bizarre death has to do with his continuing popularity.
Well, it wasn't just his death. It was also the where they had to keep his death hidden from his mother because she had had the heart attack.
Yeah.
And they did that for, what, 12 years or something before she passed?
I think so, 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, and he was dating Carol Lombard, and she even played along with it. So that story was actually really great, I thought.
Oh, thank you.
Very interesting. We should be coming up on a break.
I think we already had a pretty long break there for the chat room anyway. I mean, I'm fine. Don't mind me.
Well, I'm sure you guys wasn't on in the chat room, even though you were still talking and recording.
That's okay. If it's a long enough break, I've got a raccoon to feed.
Oh, well, I wasn't going to make it real long.
Oh, okay.
We still got quite a bit of the book to cover. I mean, we don't have to do one, but we can if you guys want to. I guess I'm supposed to anyway because I got to play some commercials.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem.
Let's play. Just do a quick commercial break.
Yeah, we'll just do a little quick one. I got to plug Parax and all that stuff.
Yeah, I can make up her bottle and then feed her right after the show.
Okay. Well, why don't you take us out on a quick little break, and we will be right back in. Jeff?
Yeah, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with your host, Henry Foister, ceiling cat Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's guest author, Keven McQueen. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.